In this tutorial, you learn a number of techniques that could help you in creating your own basic mermaid look. I'm by all means not a special effects artist, and I'm not a professional in body painting, so this was all a learning experience for me, and this is how I did my mermaid. You have to start out with the prosthetics of this makeup. Mine were the fin ear things and my slight gills on my throat. I started with the fin ear things and I cut their shape out on a thick card, and then I grabbed any sort of clay and started molding it larger than the actual fin shape. Once the piece of clay was large enough, I just placed my fin shape onto the clay and started molding and finishing up the edges around the mold. When I was happy with the shape and size of my mold, I started outlining the fin shape by just engraving the clay. Do not go fully into the clay. Then I just started removing clay within that shape, and however deep you make it is however thick your prosthetic is going to be. After taking out all the clay, I started smoothing out the entire shape, and then I actually placed the paper back into the mold just to check if all the edges matched up, and if it didn't, I fixed that. Once that was done, I added the finer details to it by making certain areas deeper so that certain parts of the prosthetic would come out in the final product. To make the prosthetic look less artificial, I guess, I took a textured sponge and just dabbed that throughout the final mold so that when the prosthetic comes out, it's not totally smooth. I repeated all these steps again to create the second mold for the smaller fin, and then just left my clay to set overnight. To actually create the prosthetic, it's pretty simple. You just powder the mold with any sort of translucent powder or face powder or even baby powder, just so it releases from it easier. And then you just simply pour liquid latex, special effects liquid latex of course, into the clay mold and just let it set overnight, or you can speed it up with a hairdryer. After it is set, you just gently peel the prosthetic out of the mold while powdering it at the same time. This prevents it sticking to itself because liquid latex can be quite sticky at first. When the prosthetic fully aerates, it becomes yellow in color, and if there's any excess latex, you can just cut that off, and if there are any holes or anything, you can just fill that up with more liquid latex. To create the gills, you will need a pan, a container, something with an edge. You could even create an edge using the clay method. You will need to warm up special effects gelatin. You can either buy this or you could make it yourself. I will leave an instructional video in the description by another YouTuber who explains in depth all you need to know about making gelatin. This is pretty simple. All you have to do is just pour the hot gelatin into the ridge of whatever you're using, and then hold it at an angle and just leave it there to dry. To remove it, you just peel it away slowly. You can powder it, you cannot. It doesn't matter as much with gelatin than it did with liquid latex. Now we start with the body painting and the application. Take off any makeup you're wearing, make sure you're starting with a clean face. And I tied up my hair because I find that easier when painting my face. I laid out white water-based body paint wherever I wanted my scales to go. I would suggest water-based because grease paint would smudge underneath all the layers we're putting on top of each other. You could use alcohol activated paint or water-based. I used a lot more water than I usually would because I did not want the white to be opaque. I wanted it to be slightly faded across the skin, as this is just a base for the teal and blue scales going on top. Once the base layer has dried, you're going to take fishnet stockings and just put them over the part that you want the scales to be on, and just put it in a comfortable position so you can paint over it easily. This is a method that's actually widely used amongst special effects artists and body painters. It's basically just stencils, and this is one of the most common stencils. Simply, I started with Lagoon Blue from the Mermaid palette and just put that on the edges of my face. I waited for the Lagoon paint to be semi-dry, and then I laid down the teal underneath it and slowly brought it up towards the blue paint and gently blended it with it. To remove it, you just lift it away from your face and then pull it above your face, because if you just lift it off, then it'll smudge all your painting that you've just done. So don't do that. And if you notice, I have a lot of smudges in certain areas, and that's what happens when you put too much paint on the paintbrush and spread it around. It just kind of wets the fishnet too much, and then it just creates massive smudges. Try not to do this because it is so tedious cleaning this up. If this does happen, then you're just going to take a very thin brush and take some white paint and put it between each section and each shape of the scales. Now this is very tedious, and you might want to smudge it with your finger a little so it doesn't look as opaque and it fits in with the slight faded white background that we laid down earlier. I just continued with these techniques throughout my face and throughout the rest of the scales. After an extraordinary amount of technical difficulties, we're back. I decided that having my normal skin tone in the middle of my face was a bit odd, so I added the faded white where the scales were not present, so it would just fit in more with the scales and looked a bit more natural. Let all of your paint dry and then apply your gills. I use liquid latex to apply my gills, and that's not the most effective way. It's just liquid latex and gelatin don't mix when it comes to adhesives. You should use spirit gum or more gelatin to apply them. When they've set, then just paint them with normal body paints. I painted mine with opaque white and lined the underneath area of them with blues and blacks because I wanted it to look like a slit in the gill. I quickly then just did my eyebrows. I filled them in very thick and messily because I just wanted it to be as natural as possible, even though we are doing a mermaid. Okay, for this, you could easily do this with spirit gum, but at the time I did not have any spirit gum on hand, so I had to use gelatin and then put tissue paper on that and then put latex on that, because gelatin was not strong enough to hold up the prosthetic fins, but latex is. The only problem with latex is that once latex gets stuck in the hair, it's impossible to get out. So I used the gelatin and tissue to protect my hair. It is possible to do this with special effects gelatin, you just need a lot of it, and I did not have that large amount at the time. I moved on to the eyes and I quickly just did a cat eye. I don't really have any techniques for this. For me it's basic, you just do a quick cat eye. It doesn't have to be clean and perfect, it's just a messy cat eye. And then you're gonna put fake lashes on top of that. I put the glue on the lashes and then you wait until the glue becomes tacky and put it on the edge of your eye. I just moved on to my lips, and you can either do your lips with a body paint or a lip gloss or a lipstick, it doesn't really matter. I just did it to tie the whole look together because my lips look really plain. Finally, we're done! I hope you found this video helpful in any sort of way. I hope you learnt something from this because I learned a bunch and I hope you enjoyed. There'll be more to come. So, see you soon.